I have this Instagram account. The handle is Splashy, which is the same as my main YouTube channel. And I generally try to stay stylistically cohesive. You can see that there are a lot of squares, there are some rectangles, and boof is represented pretty often in my work. The squares that I have are literally cut out in some places and illustrated in others. You can see in this painting, drawing, I'm not sure what you would call it. This has markers, it was made with markers, that there are two squares and one rectangle that are literally described, and then a whole bunch of other stuff that kind of falls in line with the rest of my style. Here we have a piano bench where I've actually arranged some of the content, and this is the part that I think is really interesting. So on the squares, I like to draw things and represent specific elements of my style, and on the rectangles, I like to describe them with titles. In this case, the title isn't a word, but there are 5 lines on the bottom and 5 lines on the side for this square, and that's described by a rectangle that has the same thing. On the opposite end of this cutting mat, you have something similar where there are 5 horizontal lines and then 5 slanted lines, and you can see that in the drawing as well. So without using words, I'm able to uniquely identify which square these belong to, because they're the only squares that I have that actually have these elements on them. Below, you have squares or tiles that haven't actually been associated with the work yet. But you can imagine that they might eventually be used to describe something that's larger. On the opposite end of the piano bench, we have various elements. We have something that looks kind of like a tree, something that looks kind of like a road on grass, and a sun. And these have been represented with squares that have kind of what the style might be. We have green for the leaves, brown for the trunk, gray for the road, green for the grass, and yellow for the sun, and then 2 other squares just to make this side of the piano bench have 13 elements. The interesting thing that I think is going to come is the ability to identify specific elements and then use them in other media. On my actual Instagram, you can see that I've had some of the same pieces represented across frames. The future of media, I believe, is going to be very focused more on the cohesion, the immersion in a world, more so than the style. If somebody were to copy my style, it wouldn't necessarily be too difficult. You know that I'm going to have lines, you know that those are going to add some sort of texture to the stuff that I'm producing, but the actual story behind what I create is the thing that makes me unique as an artist.